Manchester hooks at Auburn. It's the progress report. And because it's the first Wednesday of March, comes in like a lion.
Yep, it
Which it
does.
certainly is, but it's supposed to go out like a lamb.
Right.
I'm joined by my great good friend and wonderful contributor to our public life here in the state of New Hampshire, Lou D'Alessandro. And thanks to Lou, we have an outstanding guest, the executive director of the Manchester Waterworks, and we're very excited about this. Lou, I like to take a long view of things. And there was a program up in Concord today with one of your people who was the MC. Water's Worth It. It's an annual event. Very worthwhile to attend. And I got to thinking, I think in many ways we follow the path of the Romans. And you think about the Romans, and they had great infrastructure, and perhaps one of the greatest parts of their infrastructure was the water supply.
Yes.
The Roman aqueducts.
Right.
And I've even heard people say that that's when the real dark ages happened, when the Roman aqueducts failed, and the water supply of clean, sweet water for the people of whether they were rich or poor, they had the water.
Well,
and I think we have in Manchester, and Lou, you've been part of this. We have a tradition of outstanding supply of public water from Lake Massabesic, and interested to hear where that's going to be going as we go on. But the message today was New Hampshire's future is really in water.
I don't think there's any question. Water and waste are the two situations that have to be dealt with as we move forward. Availability of water and the cleanliness of water, the quality of water. And Manchester has manifested quality water for a long period of time.
Yep.
And we've got a wonderful enterprise organization with the Manchester Waterworks. I was pleased to be part of that for a few years, a number of years ago, and Mr. Crosdale was there when I was there. Actually, he was the finance person at that time. And, structurally, it's a very sound entity. From a financial standpoint, a very sound entity. And and the treatment facility that was built in Manchester, again, we were way ahead of the game in terms of quality of water. And then we had the situation about fluoride, and we went through that. I sponsored some legislation with regard to fluoride in the water in Manchester, and I think it has proven to be a very successful, well-operated venture that serves the public. And I think the public is now becoming aware of the fact that water is a very desirable commodity. Look at what's happened in Merrimack with the pollution of the wells.
Oh, yes, we had bills on that today.
Very, very, very significant problem.
Very
and about 80% of the homes in New Hampshire are served by wells. We have very few real water supplies. So it's a very significant issue. Manchester is very well run, and the projects that are online for Manchester as we move forward are very significant in terms of supplying quality water to other parts of the state. And Phil, you can tell us about that. Tell us about the plans that are afoot for the Manchester Waterworks.
Yeah. Well, actually, Mr. Crosdale, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your career in the water business? And I know you're now the director, but you probably had a long career here, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Okay.
I've had a pretty straightforward career. First, I'd like to say that thank you for inviting me. I'm more than happy to talk about water. I love talking about the industry that I'm in, and the position I'm in allows me to be a spokesperson on occasion about it. But it's very interesting. You talk about the aqueducts in Rome. They actually still use part of those aqueducts today to transport some water.
2,000 years.
So it was amazing engineering that was done back in the Roman days. Myself personally, I was born and raised in Manchester, and we talk about excellent water. I was for years and years as growing up, and I'm sure certainly with yourself, Senator, that you never thought about water.
Right. Never gave it any concern.
Never gave it a concern.
No,
turn the faucet.
There it is.
The water's
You
cold.
can have a glass of water. Don't worry
drink
about it.
Never heard about any kind of boiling water or water being restricted or anything of that nature. It was basically, it was always plentiful. It was always very good, and we always get excellent reviews whenever people come to town from other places. They always talk about Manchester Water. Manchester has just an outstanding water supply, and for 140 years they've just done it right from day one, putting together the water department, and then really just over the years, just the way that they developed the water system, and then they were at the forefront of the treatment process with the Clean Drinking Water Act of 1971, when the federal government mandated that the water be treated. Manchester was one of the first communities to actually build a treatment plant in the state of New Hampshire. They got funding from the federal government, and for just $4 million, they built a state-of-the-art treatment plant out there on Lake Massabesic. So the Manchester Water Works, they've always had great leadership, and they've always just, like I said, they've been at the forefront, and have just provided this city just an outstanding water supply.
You know, you mentioned that water treatment plant, which was certainly state-of-the-art in its day, but that was a long time ago. I mean, what's the life expectancy of that, and do you need to worry about what's next?
Well, the treatment plant was built in between 1972 and 1974.
It's a pretty long time for an infrastructure facility.
Yeah, 30 years later, back in the early 2000s, they decided they had the old treatment plant had a conventional water treatment system. They had coagulation, sedimentation, and then sand filters and charcoal filters with a little bit of chemical treatment. But then in the early 2000s, they decided to go to ozone treatment for part of their treatment process, ozone, and we have granulated activated carbon charcoal. When they did that in 2006, again, it was the state-of-the-art type of treatment at the time, and really the treatment, we're looking for that to take us probably at least another 20 to 30 years.
Really?
But you never know what comes down the road.
Really?
The treatment process changes over time as the EPA comes up with new regulations, and they find new chemicals and substances and things in the water that have to be regulated. The treatment process is constantly being revisited and looked at and changed to be able to treat some of these new elements that come into the water, such as PFOAs.
Right.
and
PFOA
things of
is
that
a big
nature.
problem.
Well, now you're being asked to help address the problems in some of our neighboring southern communities with their PFOAs, because they're looking to, get the kind of quality water we offer to our citizens here in Manchester, aren't they?
Well, what happened for years and years, they've had problems down south, Plastow mostly, that area, and with contamination of their wells. 60% of the population in this country get their water from groundwater, from wells.
I think that's true in New Hampshire too, isn't it?
Yeah, New Hampshire too. And what happened with the contamination of the wells and the groundwater, obviously they can't drink the water. So there was a couple of suits that were filed. There was one that was settled with the MTBEs.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Which is the additive for gasoline that was eliminated. The settlement was for about $27 million. So the state set aside a fund for that, where money goes strictly for MTBE issues and to solve those problems. The other fund that was set up, Exxon, they settled with ExxonMobil for about $270 million. So they set up that fund. That fund's the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Trust Fund. That money can go to basically all issues throughout throughout the state of New Hampshire, all water issues, pretty much. It's not just isolated to the MTBEs. And so what they did is, a couple of years ago, we were approached and asked that if we would be the source of supply for what's going to be the towns of Salem, potentially Wyndham down the road, Salem, Hampstead, Atkinson, which is supplied by Hawk, the Hampstead Area Water Company, and the town of Plastow.
Plastow.
And the reason we were approached was because it's just, we're very fortunate. Right now, we currently sell water to the town of Derry. So we're connected to Derry. So really, our involvement in this whole project is just pretty much just going to be pumping water
Right.
into Derry's tank. But what they're going to do over the next couple of years, and they're hoping to get this online by December of 2020, is they're going to connect Derry to Salem through Wyndham, because as you know, the southern Derry abuts Wyndham,
Right.
and Wyndham abuts Salem. So
Right.
they're going to go from Derry's going to have infrastructure built to their town line. Then they're going to connect that through Wyndham to Salem's water system. Salem has a water system. They're getting water from Canopy Lake and Arlington Lake, and they're having issues down there with using those two sources of water, because
Salt.
every summer they're draining the two lakes.
Right.
So the town folks are looking for them to find another source of water. And Salem's going to connect to Hawk, Hampstead, and then Hampstead's going to connect to Plastow. So what happens is we pump to Derry. Derry, gravity takes water for the most part down, and if the elevation's an issue, they'll pump it. They'll set up pump stations. They'll pump it into Salem. Salem will take some of the water, and some of the water they'll pump into Hampstead. Hampstead will take some of the water because they're having problems with their wells. All the water supplied to the Hawk franchise is through wells. So they really don't want to use. They're having issues with that too. So it'll go into Hawk, and then Hawk will pump it into Plastow.
Wow. So does this all raise an issue of, well, we have a call on one. You want to see if we can talk to Eddie?
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Which one?
Just
Yeah.
press the little button there. Hey, Ed. Eddie, you with us?
Hello?
Hello?
Yep.
Hi, Ed. You're on the progress report with Lou D'Alessandro and me and Mr. Crosdale, the director of the Manchester Waterworks. You want to have a question or a comment?
I have a couple of questions about out on the lake. There are more and more no trespassing signs going up. Is the waterworks slowly restricting the access to the paths around the lake? Is my first question. The second question I have is, all of the vehicles seem to be upgraded, including the director's. He's now driving around in the big Suburban, and you see them all over town. So I'm curious if we're buying more and more expensive vehicles there. And then the final question is, there's no minutes on the website for the Board of Waterworks Commissioners anymore. All of the other city agencies, city boards, commissions have their minutes on the websites, and I'm wondering why it's not on the Waterworks website. And I'll leave you alone, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the call.
Right.
I can start with the minute.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I can start with the minutes. The minutes should be on the website, and I'll look into that, when I go into work tomorrow. But I've been approached about that before, and I can look into that for the caller. As far as the fire roads go, he's speaking about restrictions on the fire roads. Public's only restricted on the fire roads in Manchester, our fire roads in Manchester, because of security reasons. Our treatment plant is in Manchester off of Lakeshore Road, and the property that we own on the Manchester side, we restrict the public on the fire roads from walking. Other than that, in Auburn, Hooksett, and Candia, where we have fire roads predominantly around the lake and Tower Hill Pond, it's open to the public.
Very
No
beautiful.
restriction. As far as the vehicles go, we have upgraded a lot of our vehicles. I can say that we take care of our vehicles and we use them for quite a bit. So I don't apologize for the vehicles. We do use them, and And one of my sticking points with people at the waterworks is we take care of our property just as we take care of our own property. We take care of the property of the Manchester Waterworks. As far as the vehicle that I drive, it's really a company car. I drive it because I do drive around and get around to all the facilities throughout the city. I use it for company business, and the rest of the company uses it also if they ever have a need for using it. It's a Suburban. It's basically a pickup truck with a hatch on it, so it's used for business, and it's used to transport employees if they ever have to go to conferences, seminars, or whatever. But it's a public vehicle, and it's really open to citywide use as far as I'm concerned. But
So you mentioned, I was very interested in your mentioning this, that you're going to come to maybe help out Salem, Plastow, Wyndham. When are we tapped out Lake Maxabeesic, and what's the is there a real issue here with the quality's exceptional. We can't say that enough. And you were a longtime commissioner of the water department, Lou, and that's where I first learned that we have about as good quality water as you can have in the United States of America for a public water system.
The water's
We should
excellent.
be very proud of that.
Yeah, we should.
But is there a capacity problem, and how are we going to address that?
well, in the 80s, a study was done by a consultant, and they determined that the safe yield from Lake Maxabeesic was 21 to 22 million gallons a day. Currently, we're below that, but at the time, because of development that was happening in the city, it was projected that we would exceed our safe yield probably around the turn of the century, 18 years ago. Well, that hasn't happened yet. But nevertheless, when they determined that there was a safe yield and we need a secondary source of water, what they did at the time was they developed this source development charge, which was a charge that they charge every new customer that connects to our water system. You have a piece of land, you build a home in Manchester, you connect to the system, you pay a source development charge. We put that money into a separate fund that accumulates, and we use for costs only associated with the secondary source of water. So we've been accumulating monies over the years to develop the secondary source. Again, the projections were a lot. The projection was a lot steeper at the time, but it sort of leveled off over the years. It has climbed a little bit.
Why did it level off?
Well, because
more
the,
efficiency in the use of our water? Or?
well, technology. Toilets is a big use of water. Used to be 3 to 5 gallons
Right.
a
So-
flush. Now it's down to 1.
Oh, well, there's a good thing.
Yeah, conservation definitely is a factor into people really using less water. There are other factors involved too, but really I think the primary factor was the development of our franchise area really didn't come to be as what they expected at the time. But nevertheless, we are approaching that safe yield, and we have begun, we are in the process of developing that secondary source. What we did 3 years ago is we built a well, and I don't know if this is a good time that I brought a picture of it.
Sure.
If you want to see it.
Let's do it. Sure, by all means. I think that's a wonderful idea.
Brendan, it'd probably be number 4.
There it is. Very nice.
That's a well that we built. I don't know if people are familiar with Quality Drive, where the ice den is, over by Home Depot, off of exit 10. On Quality Drive, right opposite the ice den, on Quality Drive, we own a piece of property that's right on the river. And what we did is we built this, what they call a radio collector well. That well you see is 16 feet in diameter and goes down about 70 feet. It goes down about 30 to 40 feet below the riverbed. And if you go to the next slide, I can give you a better idea. This is a section plan view of the collectors. That well was built, in those arms that you see go out. Basically,
And when was this well built?
this was built 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
Each of those arms is 16 inches in diameter, and they go out approximately 200 feet underneath the riverbed
Wow.
of the river, about 30 feet below the riverbed. So we use the riverbed, and the soils there are excellent. Very granular, sandy soils.
So they
So we use that
transmit
as
the
a-
water really well.
Well, we use it as a natural filter. So the water goes down into these radio collectors and then comes into the well that will eventually will pump up into our treatment facility when it's built and use that water to act as a secondary source. Now, a lot of questions have been asked, is that going to be west side water? Are we getting ours from the Merrimack River? And the answer to that is not necessarily. Because we have a river crossing, if I can show. I think I have another slide that shows that. Yep. Number 3, I think it's the one 2 before this, Brendan. Okay, this is what we
Good job,
plan on
Brandon.
doing.
Yep.
As you can see on the right, it says this was proposed raw water pump station. That's where the well is. And that's Kimball Drive, as you can see. And it comes down from Front Street off of the south side of exit 10. And you can see where it says proposed water treatment plant. That's going to be right across the street from, there's a little mall area down there
Yeah.
off the exit. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it from the well and pump it, put in a pipe, pump it to the treatment plant. And right where that treatment plant is, we have a river crossing that we put in probably about 10 years ago, which goes underneath, down from Union and River Road, down along the Derryfield School athletic fields, goes down that hill and goes underneath the Merrimack River and comes up over here. Goes up Kimball.
This exists now?
This
Yes.
exists now. Goes
Yeah.
up Kimball Drive onto Front Street,
Wow.
to service Front Street and probably about a quarter of a mile or so down
Fascinating.
River Road into Hooksett. And it ends a little bit after the Dunkin' Donuts on the left on River Road. It really protects Front Street because before that, it was pretty much just a dead end from the Amoskeag Rotary Circle where the main came out. So now this gives us a little bit of, protection from if we ever have a disruption of service somewhere from the Amoskeag Circle on Front Street, northerly.
Is this all going to be protected when they do the highway department rebuild of the whole
Oh, yeah,
interchange?
we'll be involved in that, and anything we have to move, we'll move for that, but there's not a lot involved in that. But anyways, that's where we plan on building the treatment, that's where we are gonna build the treatment plant, right there. And the
Will
water,
that be a supplemental treatment plant or a brand new one to
it's gonna be a
replace?
supplement, it's gonna probably, we're thinking, it's gonna be able to treat about 7 to 10 million gallons of water a day. We've already tested for quality and quantity, partial quality, the well, the water coming out of the well, and it looks like we can pump about 7 to 8 million gallons easily out of that well consistently without draining down the well. So the quantity of water is going to be fine. The quality of water coming out of that well is exceptional.
Really?
Because of the natural filtration. It's the water, the quality of the water coming out of the river right now through that well is better than the quality of water that we're pulling out of Lake Massabesic.
No
I
kidding.
mean, we treat that water. So the treatment of this water coming out of the river is going to be, we're hoping to be a lot less costly than what it costs us to treat water coming out of Lake Massabesic. Now, when we pump it
Well,
from
how can that be? I mean, Massapequa is.
Well, if you look at Massabesic is a very organic water. If you go up to Massabesic and put your hand down, you can barely see your hand. It's dirty water because it has a lot of organics in it. So you have to treat it for the organics. The water coming out of this well is clear as a bell. I went over there when they were divers were down in the well working on the valves, and the well was full of water. And you look down, we're looking at a video, you couldn't even see the water until the divers actually started breathing. The water was so clear. It was crystal clear.
My goodness.
Water, excellent quality coming out of that well. Now, when we pump it out of the treatment plant, water goes the path of least resistance. So if it's low pressure going back towards Manchester, back across the river, the water will go that way. If the low pressure is going up to Front Street, it will go that way. And then wherever, the distribution system is. Now, theoretically,
was that a surprise to you that this water quality was so exceptional in this well?
Oh, we were sort of expecting it. We were hoping for it. I mean,
Right.
and then, but when you actually look at the filtration, now, if you can imagine a giant fish tank you have at home with just rocks and, sand in it, and you pour water through it. You take dirty water and you pour it through it. By the time the water comes through that sand, it's pretty clean because the sand collects a lot of the,
Right.
Yeah.
a lot of the big particles, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this water's like. I mean, the water goes, it's going through 30 feet of, very, granulated
Yeah,
sand
yeah,
and small
yeah.
rocks, and it's an excellent filtration. But getting back to where the water's going, this will be on what we call a high system. So theoretically, this treatment plant will fill the Derryfield tank, Derryfield Park, our 8 million gallon tank up on Derryfield Hill. So if nobody's using water, the tank's down, this water will pump up against that and fill that tank.
Wow, imagine that.
So it's not necessarily so that this water is just for the west side or for, certain parts. Now, obviously, the water goes into our distribution system as people are turning on faucets and using water.
Yeah.
It's first come, first served, right?
Yeah.
So the water will go there first. But
Sure.
people shouldn't be worried about the quality of this water. This is going to be excellent water. And
That's good to hear.
part of the design for the treatment plant is to match the quality of water that's already in the distribution system that we're treating it. We're not going to have two different qualities of water, one at this treatment
Good.
plant and one
Good
at
to hear,
Mass.
good to hear.
Mass- It's going to be matched up, so it's going to be the same water.
And does this new facility you're talking about, does that meet your capacity requirements with the system you serve?
Unless, well, it's gonna exceed what the needs are gonna be for, unless you never know what's gonna happen in the future. Issues that are going on right now is in Hooksett. I've already been approached by Hooksett Village about doing a emergency connection there. They're about 1,500 feet down River Road, further north. They're having some issues with their water system. So that potentially, I can see years from now, 10, 15, 20 years from now, us selling water to Hooksett Village, Central Hooksett Water Precinct. They might have some water quality issues. As you know, Merrimack, we're connected to Merrimack.
Yeah.
We're already being asked
Oh, yeah. They want your water down there for sure.
to sell water to
Yeah.
Pennachuck that has a franchise area in Bedford.
Yeah.
Southern New Hampshire, the growth you're going to have down there. This will be able to provide us up to 30 million pump about the capacity of the treatment plant is 50 million gallons a day. This will be a 10 million gallon plant. The safe yield right now is like 22, but we're pumping probably in the on average in the high teens to 20. So we're approaching the safe yield. At the projection we're at now, over the past 40 years, I would think that this treatment plant will be able to provide the area, our franchise, and the area around our franchise for their needs, depending upon the growth, I think for at least another 30, 40, 50 years.
Wow.
And with this treatment plant,
It's very exciting.
it'll be built so that you could always add on to the treatment
Expand
plant. You put it in another well, you can increase the capacity of the treatment plant.
So you know, other than everybody needs water, water is life, water is worth it, absolutely get that. But beyond that, what is the motivation for Manchester's water system, which you direct, to meet all these needs outside of Manchester or outside of the greater Manchester area? Is it just, is there remunerative for you, or is it just something you should think you should do because everybody in New Hampshire should have access to good water?
Well, in the 1980s, Manchester started going outside the city. They started extending their franchise outside of the city of Manchester. We now sell water. We have about 3,500 customers outside of Manchester in the 6 surrounding towns. You know, Hooksett, Bedford, Goffstown, Auburn, Londonderry. I think I got them all. And Litchfield, we have a couple customers we picked up from work we did down there. And they also began selling water to Derry, because Derry had water problems back in the 80s. So they set up an agreement to sell water to Derry. They set up an agreement to sell water to the Southern New Hampshire Water Corporation, I believe was the name of it, Consumers Water Corporation, which was in Londonderry. Pennachuck took them over. We sell water to Pennachuck for some of their franchises that abut our franchise that we're connected to. So Manchester made the commitment to sell water to these outlying communities because basically we have the water. The water is available. People think that, you know, we have water quantity problems. We really don't. You know, we do have the water to
It's
sell.
not just Massabesic, it's these other supplies you've been talking about.
Well, we'll start when we start pulling water from the Merrimack River. We'll have enough water for, like I said, for I think many generations to come. Now, I think as far as selling water to Southern New Hampshire, economically and financially, I think it's good for the city of Manchester and the ratepayers of the city of Manchester, because I think the margin that we get from selling the water to Manchester obviously enables us to, you know, the rates aren't going to go down. The rates will continue to rise as costs go up, but not at the accelerated rate they would have.
Right.
I mean, you're adding to your, it's a
I see.
business. You're adding
I
to your
see.
margin.
I see, sure.
So
And you've got the resource.
we have the resource. I think, and it shouldn't be a factor because I'm the director of the waterworks, and it's not just for me personally, but I think it's good for the state to be a good neighboring community.
Sure.
We have these communities in the southern part of the state
We're
that
connected to them.
have issues,
Right.
and if we can help them, but not at the expense of, we are, you know, our responsibility is for Manchester. Number one, our franchise. Number two, but if you can help your neighbor, I think it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
Do you
Makes sense.
now provide water to all parts of Manchester?
Yes,
I believe you
the
do.
whole city.
Yeah.
We have 500 miles of distribution system in Manchester and in the surrounding communities.
Wow.
Well, and haven't we gone through a process where we're repairing pipe that's been in the ground for a long period of time? And when I was there, the Waterworks had a plan for restoration and fix up. They were lining the
'Cause we
pipes
got a lot
and so
of
forth.
old
We got a
infrastructure.
lot of old infrastructure, and so we've been working on that to make that better, because leakage. You know, the city of Boston lost 50% of the water that it cleaned. 50%.
I just heard this morning up in Concord from a
Yeah.
good fellow from up in Colebrook. Their water system was losing 75% of the water going through the pipes.
Well,
Our account for water is 5% or less.
yeah.
That's
We have a
amazing.
very tight distribution system.
How do you do
We
that?
have one of the, statistically, we have probably one of the better distribution systems in the country.
Sure.
How do you do that? Because it's got to be old, doesn't
Well,
it?
it's-
Or
it's-
maybe
it's-
you've been replacing it.
It's great maintenance programs over
Right.
there. Now, I don't take credit for it. I mean, I inherited an unbelievable company that has basically done it the right way
For a
for
long
150
period, right.
years.
Yeah,
They've
they
had
have.
great leaders, like I said, great leadership, great
Yes.
workers, great commissions. That basically did it. They did it the right way.
Yeah.
And what we do have a maintenance program and
Yes.
main replacement programs. But getting back to the leakage,
Yes.
if the national average for a water system our size is about 15 leaks per every 100 miles. and we have 500 miles of main. So if you can do the math, that's 75 leaks. Now, typically we have half that, 30 to 40 leaks. 40 would be unusually high. Typically around 30 to 35 leaks a year, and not major leaks. It's the major leaks. It's the Lowell Street leak,
Right.
Goff Street, right down on Beach Street,
Yeah, Second
Bridge Street. We lost 6 million gallons of water.
I remember some of these.
You see those in the news. Everybody shows up and
Right, right.
and sees
Right.
that and says,
Wow.
you know, the Manchester Water Works is hemorrhaging water. Those are big leaks, and they're concerns for us. But, you know, overall, we don't have a lot of leaks in the city. We do have a replacement program. We have the cleaning and line program.
Yes, yes.
Cleaning and line program. We might take a 100-year-old main, and we dig up a section of it. We have section plans of all the distribution system. We look at all the mains annually. We look at the leak history because we record the leak history on our section plan. So we record all the history of everything that's happened to that main. So that's looked at, and we say, okay, well, this has a leak history. Maybe we have to go in. We did that last year too, up on a street up in the north end. We went in and relayed it because we're just having too many leaks on that particular street. We knew it was bad pipe. But we look at leak history. We look at the condition of the pipe. We look at a lot of it's cost driven. We look at what the city's doing. Where's the city putting in new paving? So if they're putting in new paving in a certain road, well, maybe we can, if that's up for a relay versus cleaning and lining, maybe we'll go in there and relay it. We'll save paving costs. But cleaning and lining, we might have 80 to 100-year-old main. We take a cross section of that, and the main's in excellent condition, like the aqueducts in Rome, right? They used to make cast iron main. What the problem with cast iron main is it tuberculates on the inside because it's iron.
Okay.
And so I didn't bring pictures, but it gets all this crud on the inside. So we go in and they take a wire brush, and they dig holes every 500 feet. They go in, take a wire brush, pull a wire brush through, clean it out, and then they come back with cement mortar lining, another little machine that goes into the pipe and lines it with cement, and we're good to go for years and years to come. We've cleaned and lined for about 70 years now.
Wow.
And a lot of that main is still in excellent condition. I don't want to startle the public, but we do have 120-year-old main out there that's in excellent condition. That could go for 200 years.
Right. Yeah.
We have some main. Some of the problem main
That's wonderful.
Some of the problem main we have is only 50 or 60 years old. We're finding with ductile iron, sometimes that rots from the outside. We have problems. And that could be caused by soil problems.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of issues that are involved in determining whether
Right.
you clean and line, you relay, or how you maintain the system. But I think overall, I mean, we have an excellent distribution system.
Right.
What's
Wow.
the average age of the distribution system infrastructure, would you say?
Uh,
Apparently, it's not determined.
Well,
whether
I looked at a 75-year-old annual report, and they had about 300 miles back then. At about 75 years, we've had another
Yeah,
200 the
miles.
past 75. So we
Yeah,
have
Yeah.
very old.
See what David has to say.
David.
Hey, David, this is the Progress Report. I hope you're enjoying the show and want to be on with our director of the Manchester Waterworks, Mr. Cruisdale. And we'd like to welcome you.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Lou.
Hi,
Mr.
how are you?
Crosby, I got a question for you. The low-pressure pumping station on Coas Ave. I noticed a lot of the trees have outlived their life. Is there any plan to replant some trees in that area or other parts of the waterworks property in that area? Number one. Number two, when I was a kid, there used to be an apartment for rent in that facility. Is that still happening?
Well, we just so happened to be rehabbing the Coas pump station where the pumps that were in there were tired and old, and we're swapping them out. It's about a $2 million project, and we're in the process of doing that right now. The residence that's attached to the Coas pump station was put there. The Coas pump station is the original pump station. Was built in 1871. When the Waterworks formed in 1871, they built the main dam, which is up Canal Road. They built the canal, the Coas pump station, put in 24-inch Maine, from the Coas pump station, built the 13 million gallon reservoir at Mammoth Road, right, and then put in 22 miles of distribution system with about 25 hydrants and 200 services to start. 3 years, the city did that. So they went from the lake, Coas pump station, Mammoth Road, down to Elm Street in 3 years.
Oh.
Cost of $600,000. It was amazing what you know, the history of the waterworks. It's amazing.
Yeah, I bet it is.
And we just built those 2 tanks for $9 million up at Mammoth Road. So that's the difference in cost these days.
That was the last big investment you had to make,
The
wasn't it?
Coas pump station originally was built had old steam pumps in there and coal driven, you know. Yeah, you actually had to have somebody live there to actually keep the pumps going. So we had a resident that was an employee of the waterworks that lived there for years and years. Well, up until about the last gentleman that lived there moved out about 5 years ago, and we haven't had anybody since, and we don't plan on having anybody live there anymore because it's all the pump station now is all automated. So
Wow.
we're not going to have a resident live there. As far as the trees go, the trees right around the Coas pump station, because we've done work with the electrical lines and the transmission station that was there. Actually, our power comes through the Coas pump station and then up. We own power lines to the treatment plant. So the trees that are there now that have overgrown, they're a danger. We're having them currently chopped down. We like to replant trees. Our forester, John O'Neill,
Oh, he's terrific.
he's more into planting than chopping down. Believe me, we don't chop down trees because we like to chop down trees. We chop down trees because he's a responsible forester.
Right.
It's for the betterment
Yeah.
of the watershed.
Yeah, and we do get revenue from the timber.
We do
Yeah.
get,
Yeah, we get revenue from the
you
timber.
know,
because-
a big problem we had the last couple of years is people said we were clear cutting out in
Right.
Auburn trees. We weren't. We had a red pine scale problem.
Right.
There's this little bug that comes in and eats all the red pine.
Yeah.
And kills
Yeah.
the trees overnight. So what John did is he got a lumber company to come in, and we harvested all that red pine and sold it because the red pine did come in. It was at Bear Brook and took down, you know, acres at Bear
Yeah,
Brook, and
yeah.
it was just coming. We found it coming our way. So it was either take the trees down, or it'd be a nuisance and a hazard if you
Sure.
left them up because they'd be falling down.
Yeah. I think the forest project, when I was there, was a really good one. It was good forest management. As I said, we did gain from the sale of the wood. And I've had testimony from the forester. He's come up and appeared before a couple of committees that I'm on. So I've kind of followed that. And it isn't clear cutting. Clear cutting is not a good thing, but indeed it's selective cutting. It's selective cutting, and it's good forest management, which we need. We need more of that in our state. Good forest management.
Young
But I
trees,
think-
healthy trees are better for your watershed than older trees.
Yeah.
So you have to keep just cycling them out.
yeah.
So I
Sure.
think you should do a better job of selling what you do for the city of Manchester than you do. I mean, you know, I learned from Lou D'Alessandro, who was a commissioner for a long time, that we had, you know, A-plus quality water in the city. And in fact, to me, it was astonishing that which one, a water bottling company was just scooping the water over.
But we sell water to Coca-Cola bottling,
Dasani, is it?
and they bottle Dasani water. Right
Right.
there.
I mean, I just think that's a story that should be told, that we have,
Yeah.
you know, New York City claims they have the champagne of city water, and I guess they have some claim to that. But we have a really good quality champagne of water here,
Yeah, we do.
and I just don't. I just think we should
People
make
don't realize.
people know about that.
People don't realize that one thing about bottled water we laugh about a little bit is bottled water is regulated by the FDA, and we're regulated by the EPA, and the EPA has more stringent
Right,
regulations
better standards.
than the FDA.
Right.
So the quality of our water is held at a higher standard than bottled water.
Right.
And we are so
The one
fortunate.
issue- the one issue-
We are so fortunate here. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the Southwest. I have relatives out there, and they're in a water crisis every
All the
day.
time.
Every day.
Yeah.
And we have the water here, and we have people like you that are taking care of it for us. and making sure that we have the benefits of,
I can tell you a quick story.
please do.
You remember the Chili Fest that we had?
Yeah.
So we had the Chili Fest. So we set up a water station there just so people could have something to drink that didn't
With
want
chili, that's a good idea.
So we actually ran the water from a fire hydrant, and we do have this water station that we use for events and things like that. That has 6 bubblers around it. We had people come over there from the western part of the country, stand at the water station and drink it like they were drinking beer, free beer. And I'm saying, you like the water, right? I'm standing there, I go, just kidding around. I go, you like the water? He goes, you wouldn't believe how good this water tastes.
Right.
And they're so
It's true.
complimentary of it. They
Yeah.
used to water in Nevada and,
Right.
and some of the states
Yeah.
over there that have water issues.
Sure. And there's a scent with the water in many other places.
The
Yeah, that there's a smell associated
Yeah.
with
I
it.
think one of the reasons people drink bottled water is the fluoride issue. People don't want, and I just want to point out that the waterworks, we do what the voters want.
And they did want fluoride.
Voters voted in for
Right.
fluoride. We're,
At least-
we're merely
at
the
least twice.
mechanism for getting
Right,
it into the
right.
water.
Right. And
But
it's-
that's one of the reasons why people drink the bottled water. They don't want to drink the fluoride. We put about 7 parts per billion into the minimum amount required
Yeah.
to have the effect that's desired
Good.
for fluoride. And
It's
there's already
really
natural
good.
fluoride in the water anyways. You're going to find it in the water.
Yeah. So what are the challenges you see ahead for the Manchester Water Department?
Just the challenge is keeping up with the past. The way the waterworks has been managed over the years, it's a huge responsibility, and just maintaining what's already been a well-maintained system. Look out to the future and see, I wouldn't call it a legacy, but what I think one of my responsibilities is to look 30 years from now and say, where are we going? We're doing improvements. We did the 2 tanks up on Mammoth Road.
Right.
Replaced a 17 million gallon reservoir. We'll probably need another tank to replace our 4 million gallon reservoir, which was put in 1893 up on Derryfield Hill next to our 8 million gallon tank. That should probably be replaced. It just has a cover over it, which isn't, in today's standards, isn't, the best
Right.
situation.
Right.
We're looking at possibly building a tank. We're working right now with the county commission to try to acquire an easement out in Goffstown to possibly build a tank someday out behind the Hillsborough County Nursing Home up on the hill to give better fire protection
Right.
and service to the west side of, not only the west side of Manchester, but potentially out in Goffstown if you go the other way. We do service Goffstown, Grassmere out
Right.
in
Well,
Goffstown.
we extended a water line into Goffstown when we had our money. You recall that situation? That area that had no service, and the wells were all being contaminated because of the flooding of the river. We connected those people up and spent what 1.5 million, and it was matched to supply water to that group. So the waterworks has been a very good partner in terms of helping the other communities. It's been a good mutually satisfaction is what's happened.
We're regulated by PUC for our out-of-town customers. We aren't regulated for the in-town customers. As long as we don't charge more than 15% to our out-of-town customers, we don't have to be regulated for rates. We charge our out-of-town customers 15% more than what our in-town customers pay. Part of what my concern is and what I feel my responsibility is to make sure that our rates don't go out of control. We will have rate increases, right? But it's more for capital infrastructure. We have to maintain the capital
Right.
infrastructure. We do have a lot of old mains that have to be replaced. More importantly, I think we have a lot of old infrastructure in the valves that need to be replaced. It's just a fact to maintain a 150-year-old water system.
Yeah.
And so, just from a financial standpoint and from a structural standpoint, infrastructure standpoint, is to find that balance. And I think people should realize that if you look at what you pay in Manchester, talk to people in Litchfield, because they pay 4 times as much
Right.
in Litchfield for water, getting it from another water system than you pay in Manchester. Now, that's not an excuse for raising rates, but we do have the 5th lowest out of 110 community water systems in the state. We do have the 5th lowest rates in the state. And 3 of those other systems that have lower rates than us are subsidized by their towns. So it's not, we aren't. We don't get taxpayer dollars.
Right.
But we just, whatever we earn from water usage has to pay for the water works.
Well, it certainly is a good thing that you have your own funding source, I would think, definitely. I wish our schools did.
Yeah. Well,
Well, just think, our in-town rate right now is $1.54.
Yeah,
You get 748 gallons of water for that.
yeah.
So 748 gallons, it would cost you more than that to buy a bottle of Dasani
Yeah.
some places in
right.
stores.
Sure.
So
Speaking of that, what are you doing to, we should all, reduce our use and conserve wherever we can, whether it's electricity or, anything else. What are you doing to help educate the water consumers that we have here in the city to not be profligate with their use of our
well, we do have
precious resource?
information on our website for water conservation and how people can conserve water and not use as much if they want to keep their costs down. And one thing I can point out is your sewer charge is tied to your water
One of
usage.
them, right.
So when you add the two together, you pay about $5 for 1 CCF, 100 cubic feet of water usage, right? So really, you're going to save $5 for every CCF you can save. Just turning the water off when you're brushing your teeth, instead of letting it run while you brush your teeth. Turning the water off when you take a shower to soak down, right? Just turning the water off and
Right.
not wasting water when you don't need it.
Right.
You save money. So, there's things that you can do.
Do people see that in their bills? I mean, can you tell people you really benefit from doing this, or just do it because it's a good thing to do?
Well, it's a good thing, and you can benefit. People can most benefit by the lawn irrigation, getting a lawn irrigation system, and then putting it on timers and things. I think people overwater their properties
Yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah.
But it's basically pretty straight line and consistent year to year. How much basic water use people are creatures of habit. Use about the same amount of water for your basic needs year in and year
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
and we see that. But all factors considered, I mean, Manchester's in a very good place with their water.
I think
when
so.
you look across the country,
I believe
and all
this.
the water problems people have,
Right.
we have I wouldn't say an abundance, and you never have an abundance of water, but
It's a precious resource.
we have a watershed that's 45 square miles that surrounds Lake Massabesic. 45 square miles. The city of Manchester is 42 square miles, so it's bigger than the city of Manchester. It's a giant bowl.
And you
that
own
just-
it all,
We don't own it all. We own about
but you control it.
8,800 acres of land, but our watershed manager, John O'Neill, he has to be involved in everything in that watershed because it impacts the
Right.
water. So he's very involved in all the towns that are in our watershed and all the, the residents, constantly involved in making sure that development is right and, people don't, encroach upon our land and really, pollute the ground, really.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
a big issue. The
And I
pollution.
know you vigorously, you have your people out there at Massabesic on the environs, which is beautiful, beautiful place to, enjoy a walk or cross-country ski or something. But you do have your people out there to make sure that we protect the integrity of the
People should
system.
realize, you go up to Concord. Concord has they have a pond, lake for their water supply. It's fenced off. It's restricted to the public.
Yeah.
A lot of communities are restricted. You
Yes.
go down to Worcester, restricted. Province, restricted. And Province has 10,000 acres of land, all restricted. We don't restrict our property except
Yeah,
for
good
the
point.
Manchester side near the treatment plant. So it's for public use out there. It comes a price with that.
Yes.
Is you have to patrol it, you have to
Right.
maintain it,
Right.
and make sure that people don't abuse the
Right.
use of the property. And we do have all kinds of recreational use.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
On the lake, we don't own the lake. The state owns the lake. The state allows boating on the lake, motor
Right.
boating. That's always a question. Why do you allow motor boating, not swimming?
Right,
Well, if we allowed swimming, it'd look like Hunt Pool
right.
on a weekend. So,
Well,
and it's a very shallow lake. It's
Yeah.
only about 20 feet deep.
Yeah, I was
on
amazed to
average.
learn that. It looks so big, but
So-
it's not that big.
You want to make sure
deep.
that, what goes, we have milfoil problems and other
Right.
problems that this first estate has.
And
I'm
those
I'm
have to
sorry.
be dealt with. No, but the milfoil, that's another situation that we ought to talk about someday. But milfoil and the advancement of milfoil in many of our water bodies and other vascular plants, aquatic vascular plants that are they are really, the infestation is happening throughout the state. We have to deal with that too.
Yeah.
But-
So I guess we reached the end of the hour.
Can I just say
Yeah.
one thing?
Yes, you may.
I just like to give my condolences to Kathleen Perkins, a friend that had passed away a couple of days ago. She worked at the waterworks. She was a great employee, great friend of the family. Sorry to hear about her loss.
Sorry to hear that,
for
too.
family. And I have the greatest 80 employees that any director could ever hope to have.
Well, I
Can't
think
beat
they
that.
Tremendous-
I bet they think they got a great boss.
People, I've worked for the city for 25 years. People talk about city workers. I couldn't be proud of the people that work at the waterworks. They do an outstanding job, and it's a great workforce there.
Yeah,
I
always
ha- I
thought
have
that.
to get that in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's it.
Well, as I
said.
say, I first
Well
learned
said.
about what a treasure we had in our Manchester water supply from my good friend Lou D'Alessandro when he was a commissioner. And I want to thank you, Mr. Truesdale, for coming on and spending time with us. It's been terrific. And,
I'm sorry we couldn't look at more of the pictures. But
Well, we can have you back.
we
You
could,
know,
we could do like 5 hours. Of,
Well,
I'm glad you
re-
brought them in. They
Return
were very
visit.
good. So, Mike Farland and I'll be back next week, folks, with another edition of the Progress Report. I can't tease it.